Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today's video is going to cover recent mint on card vintage Star Wars figures that sold at auction, mainly Trilogos. Yet again, there was just another incredible batch of very high grade examples that AFA/CIB sold at auction, including an AFA 85 Trilogo Jawa. That is a super rare Trilogo, and the price did not disappoint. I did get a few others outside of Trilogos. You guys are probably getting sick of Trilogos. I get it. So I did include a few others before we'll dig into that incredible batch that just closed the other night. As always, thank you to my Patreon supporters. They allow this channel to be what it is today. Patreon.com/actionfiguregrader is where you can go to sign up. All right, so let's go ahead and take a closer look. Please be sure to leave me a like if you enjoy my videos. It helps with the algorithms. Let's start off with some ESBs. This is one that I sent to my Patreon supporters in a buy it now alert. This is a transition 21 back ESB R5D4. And the photos were not great. It was a punched example, as you can see there, and it did have a price sticker in the upper right corner. It was graded AFA 75 with 285 subscores. And these are kind of tough to find. The R5D4 on the 21 back Secret Star Wars action figure offer card. Very tough to find this one. You don't see this one too often, and they usually go for a lot of money. The 75 grade probably held it back just a little bit, but it was a clear blister. Pretty nice example overall. And $532 I thought was actually really fair. Given that AFA 80s and above, you're probably talking $800 plus. That would be my guess on that one. But very nice example there. Love that card back. Love that card image. Another ESB I had to show you is a 47 back free Forlom offer for Luke. This is the lighter brown-haired Luke Farm Boy. This is not the dark brown, I don't think. It looks like the lighter brown. Now, the figure did have quite a bit of mold going on it. You can kind of see that in the close-ups here. Lots of spotting and modeling to the face as well as the body. So, unfortunately, that's going to hold back the figure score. Probably not a gradable example. I think the best it could get because of that mold is probably about a 75 overall, even though the card's in pretty good shape. Blister is in pretty good shape. But unpunched example, I mean, there's a lot positive about it, but I think because of the mold to the figure, maybe you could put it under a UV light or something like that and have a little bit of luck getting that mold off. But it looks like it's kind of really ingrained in the figure, and that does happen, as we've talked about at length in many videos. But it's still a really nice item. I think that, for me, $12.75 is probably pushing it. Personal opinion on that. I think that, you know, if it was a super clean figure, I could see paying that price or even maybe a little bit more. But it did have, you know, quite a bit of mold to the figure. It wasn't terrible. It looks a lot worse up close than it does in the far away shots. But, you know, you can see very clearly it's got something going on there. Maybe it comes off if you put it underneath a UV lamp for 30 minutes or so. I don't know. But it's a shame because the rest of the item is really good shape overall. $12.75, though, is what it sold for in the auction. Unpunched 47 back. Next up, here's another one I sent to my Patreon supporters. This is a Sakuda sticker 9-note. And, you know, it just had light yellowing to the blister. I think it's really just the inner, well, yeah, I think the outer blister's got some yellowing too. And most of these do yellow. The inner tray on this one is very yellowed, but they usually get a lot more yellow for whatever reason. The Sakudas just do not hold up well, the blisters. Here's the back of the card so you can see what I'm talking about. These were distributed in Japan, and so they had this Sakuda distribution sticker on the back. They are very sought after. I don't think I only got Low Gray and Squid Head, I think, are the only two I've got for the Sakudas. But like the Darth Vader and the C-3PO, they can, and the Luke Jedi, they can be very, very expensive because they're very tough to find. This was a very clean example, though, and I think this one would grade very well. It's an unpunched example, no price sticker. Probably gets an 80 plus at a minimum. I think that was a very nice example. And it was $300 or best offer, which I thought was actually a pretty fair deal. And I like that one a lot. So it sat for a little while, but it did finally sell at around $300. This size Snoodles and the Rebo band sold. This one appeared to be factory sealed. It did have the crease on the flap, unfortunately, but it was factory sealed, and I don't know what happened. It just kind of fell underneath the radar. It was not perfect by any means. I mean, it had some issues with it, some tears and scuffs and things like that, but factory sealed for $214. I mean, a loose complete Rebo band goes for $150 or more. I mean, I think even more than that usually. $214 is crazy cheap, really, really cheap for a sealed example, no matter what the condition. I mean, you know, again, it's not perfect. I know that. But given that you could probably put this in a sliding acrylic case and it would display very well, $214 is an absolute bargain of a deal for what appeared to be, anyway, from my untrained eye, it appeared to be a factory seal example. You can see the tape on the back there holding it together. And, you know, it's probably like a 70 grade. You know, it's not like super high grade. But for a factory sealed example for that price, that's a bargain. Likewise, the same seller also had a factory sealed speeder bike. And this one was in really clean shape, you know, just some light creases and things like that. The flap was in really good shape with no obvious damage to it. $103. We just documented on the channel an AFA 85 Plus for the mint and sealed box speeder bike that sold for over $800. And I was talking about in that video, I was like, hey, look, you can get a really nice example. I'm not saying it's going to get an 85 Plus, but you can get a really nice example for like $150 to $200. This one sold for $103. And I would argue it's got a really good chance to get an 80 grade overall. So it's just crazy how it goes sometimes on eBay. You never know what's going to happen in some of these auctions. And, you know, it did, you can see there in the upper right on the back, it did have some damage to it, but I think it's got an outside chance at an 80 grade, certainly a 75 overall for a factory sealed example. For $100, that's a really, really good deal for that. Next up, this Obi-Wan's another example of one that I thought sold for way below fair market value. This one was pristine. I mean, it was very nice. Obviously, it's got yellowing to the blister, but the card is unpunched, no price sticker. There's no creases that I can see on it. Here's the back. I mean, this is a really clean example, and I think would grade an 80 easily. And it sold for $406. We've seen AFA graded examples for the Obi-Wan on the Power of the Force card go for $800 plus in high grade. And this one would definitely be a good candidate to send to be grading. So 406, again, I think that's pretty much below market. I was expecting kind of 600-ish, but again, you just never know what's going to happen on eBay in these auctions. And that was a good deal there. Here was the Boba Fett. This one was from the same seller that had the size Snoodles and the speeder bike. This one was a beautiful Boba Fett with the coin offer for Boba Fett. So kind of cool to get that. 77 back with the coin offer in very, very good shape. This is the Made in Taiwan figure inside the blister as well. And again, I'm assuming no cracks to the blister. It didn't look like it to me. Very, I'd say moderate yellowing. Certainly not as bad as some examples we've seen. Probably a 75 plus, maybe an outside chance at an 80 grade. And that one sold for $13.46, which was a great deal there. So, Boba Fett mint on cards have definitely come down in price. And even I need to probably adjust my price expectations for a lot of the Return of the Jedi Boba Fett's. We have seen some 21 backs, some other ESB card backs that have sold for significant money, both on Hakes as well as on eBay. But I feel like for yellowed Return of the Jedis, even the Made in Taiwan, which is more sought after, they have come down in price. So adjust your expectations accordingly if you're looking for one. That was a nice example. I mean, some people don't want the coin offer because it blocks the card art. To me, I think it's really cool to get a Boba Fett mint on card with the Boba Fett coin offer. It's just kind of a cool combination. So $13.46, absolutely fantastic deal, in my opinion. All right, now on to the rest of the video, which is going to cover nothing but the recent sales yet again from CIB, Collectible Investment Brokerage. They're obviously AFA. They do consignments for sellers. And, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but clearly somebody had a massive collection of Trilogos. Lots of duplicates, all very high grade. They were graded all over the map in terms of recent grading versus 2006, 2010. I mean, the grading time period for a lot of these, you can type in, the certification number on AFA's website to see when it was graded, to see the population report. And, you know, I do think that seeing the population report for some of these has really driven up the prices for a lot of AFA graded items in high grade. And these, you know, they were all over the map in terms of the price. You know, the Chief Chirpa was an unpunched example. We just documented one that sold recently in this kind of 400-ish ballpark. This one sold for $455. That's kind of at the upper end of the range. I have an AFA 85 Chief Chirpa. I think mine might be punched. I can't remember. I paid $380 for mine, so it's in the ballpark. And that one was a pretty nice example. But they get progressively more ridiculous as we go here. The AFA 85 Squid Head is punched. Beautiful example. That one sold for $490, which, you know, I would say, you know, some people were telling me, I think that's too high for a fairly common squid head. Squid head's pretty common on the Trilogo, but it is an 85, so I get it. I think my AFA 80, I paid less than $250 for it, but, you know, that was a couple years ago, and it's not an 85. So I feel comfortable with that price point, though, relative to what this 85 sold for $490. The Gamorrean Guard, this is another interesting one. I just bought one of these this year from CIB. It was also an AFA 80. I would argue that this one is better than mine. This one, it did get a 75 for the blister score on this one, but it just looks a little cleaner than my blister, even though this one I think has the same sub scores as mine. Mine might actually be a little higher. I think I've got an 85 for the figure score, 80 for the card. The blister, I think on mine might be an 80. I can't remember, but I would argue that this one is better. This one is a better example overall. Now, the card is not. The card, I would say, is probably a little overgraded. To me, this is backwards. The blister should have gotten an 80, and the card should have gotten a 75. I mean, if you look at the card here, it's got a big crease in the upper right, lots of edge wear all the way around it, a lot of edge wear on the bottom left there. You know, it's just not an 80 card score to me. But the blister got a lower sub score than mine did, and this blister looks better to me. So for whatever it's worth, I mean, I don't know if it really matters. I think I paid about $450 for mine, maybe a little higher. I don't remember exactly what. This one sold for $517, so it's in the ballpark again. But, you know, the prices are up on Trilogos. I just think that the constant flood of high-grade Trilogos has really driven up the prices. Now, this one was an interesting one. This one was a UKG 85 for General Lando, and it had a 290 subscores and a bubble of an 80. And I think it's appropriately graded, maybe an 85 with AFA. I mean, you know, UKG and CAS are going to give 90s. AFA very rarely gives 90s on even the subscores. So this one sold for $535, which I thought was a good deal. I think that was a really good deal for an unpunched General Lando. But again, there's some people that just don't collect UKG. I get it. That's fine. To me, I don't care. I think that this all day long gets at least an 80 with AFA and has a good chance at an 80 plus or maybe even an 85. But I think most likely this is an 80 plus with AFA. It's a beautiful example. And for $535, that's significantly less than what the AFA 85 sold for on eBay, you know, maybe 2-3 weeks ago. This one I thought was maybe on the upper end, but still within market. This was the Ramba. It was graded AFA 80. And it had an 85 and a 90 subscore. Beautiful unpunched example. And that seems to be the going theme, that anytime they're unpunched, they are going for more money. And again, we've talked about that. It's just a function of a lot of these coming out of the factory, especially the Palatoy factory, already punched. They just very rarely came out of the factory even unpunched. The last 17 were more common because they were just getting them out the door. But, you know, some of the other earlier characters, very rarely do you see them unpunched. $555, I'm not going to dog anybody for paying that. I personally would have paid that myself. There was an AFA 85 for Ramba that sold for over $800, so $555 is certainly very fair for an AFA 80. Here is Lumat. This is a punched example. This is also the German Parker with the Clipper catalog. So this is the German Parker card back, but it also has the Clipper catalog on the back. A lot going on there. This one got the 85 grade. And you could make an argument that it's no longer an 85. It's got yellowing to the torso, as you can see very clearly on the figure. And that's a common thing. I have the same problem on mine. I think the figure score would drop to a 75, maybe an 80. Probably doesn't get the 85 overall, but it's still a very nice example. I think I paid $375 for my AFA 80. And I would argue that this is an AFA 80. Now, mine's not the Clipper, and I think mine's just the regular Palatoy, not the German Parker, not the Clipper. So it's got a little bit more going on with it. $535, I'd pay it personally. I don't have a problem paying that. Just be aware for a lot of these, and as we go through some of these later ones that have yellowing to the blister, if AFA releases any more for auction, just pay attention to figure degradation, pay attention to blister yellowing, because a lot of these have been graded like 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they maybe the grading label no longer holds up. And I would argue that that's the case for the figure score on this one. The figure's not an 85. That's an 80 at best, probably more like a 75. This has got more yellowing to the figure than mine does. But it's fine. I mean, whatever. I'm nitpicking right now. This is the Anakin Skywalker. This one went a lot higher than I expected. Another seller over in the UK had an AFA 85 that sold for $535 a couple of days before this one ended. This one sold for $790. So again, part of it is UK versus US. Those of us that collect Trilogos like me here in the US, we're probably going to have to pay more for them than you guys have to pay for them over in the UK, because you guys have a bigger supply of them. And for those of us that collect them here, you do take some risk buying overseas, because especially maybe not for this one because it's got the smaller, I guess it's a Meccano blister, but for the standard Palatoy blisters that are gigantic and the figure can rattle around, it can act like a torpedo, especially on Anakin. We've talked about that in past videos as well. Anakin is a very heavy figure, and on the larger Palatoy blisters, it can shoot right through them. That happened to Chris W., my buddy who's been on the channel and who runs Rogue 5 Toys. You know, he had one that was a high-grade example, and it just blew right through the blister. So I felt bad for him. He got his money back, but it sucks. But this was an AFA 85, beautiful example. Again, the smaller blister, probably a Meccano blister. Again, don't quote me on that. Don't dog me if I'm incorrect on the blister type. I don't know my blisters and which factory is which. I just know German Parker versus standard Palatoy. The blisters, I have no idea. Okay, I'm not an expert on this stuff. I just like to collect them. But $790, it's a big number relative to the one that literally just sold with the exact same blister type, exact same grade, also punched like this one. That sold for $535, but it is what it is. That's kind of the market. This is the one I really want. This is the German Parker Han Solo. You can see, again, it's got the thinner hang tab type and then the bright yellow blister. AFA 85. It would have been perfect for my collection because I've got Han Hoth, I've got Han Bespin, both of them in an 85. So the first 12 Han Solo would have been awesome to have with my collection, and I would have paid $795 in a heartbeat for it. I've kind of hit the wall. I'm on another hiatus. I go in spurts where I buy a lot and then I don't buy for a while. So I'm on my buying hiatus. It will extend for at least a few months while I pay off my PayPal credit. But this one was a nice one. I really do want to get this one eventually to pair with the other two Hans that I have in my collection on the Trilogo. It's the last one I need, I think. Han Trenchcoat would be the fourth. So Han Trenchcoat and then the first 12 Han on the Trilogo would be really cool. And then I think I'd have all four Hans. Well, Han Carbonite, but I don't think I'll ever get that one. That one's expensive. But I would at least like to get this one to go with Han Bespin and Han Hoth. And, maybe I get the Han Trenchcoat too, because that one's not terribly expensive on the Trilogo as well. That was a nice one, though, for $795. I would have paid it. Unfortunately, my buddy he's really trying to get a Klaatu. He's a Patreon supporter and a buddy of mine. This Klaatu was an AFA 85, and he called it. He called this one. He told me before the auction would end, this is going to go for stupid money. There has not been a high-grade Klaatu, regular Klaatu, high-grade Trilogo in a long time on eBay. And he's right. There has not been. It's been years. And he said this is going to go for stupid money. And I said, nah, it'll go for like $450, $500. You're crazy. You'll get it. Don't worry. You'll get it. And he said, no, it's going to go for stupid money. And this one was an AFA 85, Klaatu, straight 85s for the subscore and a punched example. And it still went for $837. So yet again, he was right. I was wrong on that. And he couldn't justify going this high. And I don't blame him. Just stay stay hunting. That's really the fun anyway, buddy, is the hunt. Once you get it, you put it on a shelf and then you move on. It's not nearly as fun as continuing the hunt. So you'll get one eventually. I know you will. But that one did sell for big money at $837. Leia Organa in the combat poncho. This one was yellowed, as I alluded to earlier. You can see the blister is the smaller blister type, but it's yellowed very clearly around the white band. You can see the yellowing to the seal. And it still sold for $866. $866 on this one. Too much money. Too much money. No way I'm spending that. It's a longer, thinner blister style. Again, I'm assuming a Meccano blister, but I don't know for sure. Meccano blisters do tend to yellow in my experience, or these thinner blisters do tend to yellow in my experience versus the larger Palatoy blisters. So somebody overpaid, in my opinion. No offense if it was you. I'm just saying it was yellowed. I don't think it's worth $866. I'm not even sure I'd pay $600 for it, but that's my personal opinion on it. But a beauty. It was certainly a beauty. Bossk, this is a standard, Trilogo Palatoy larger style blister, AFA 85, and this one sold for a little bit less than the last one that sold. I don't remember the exact number, but it was an AFA 85, also unpunched, and I think it was in the 9s. I think it was in the 900s. This one sold for $867.92. AFA 85, beautiful example. Mine is 85.85.90. This one's 85.80.85. But pretty similar to mine, and I think I paid $750-ish for mine several years ago. So, again, I'm kind of in the money on that. That's fine. Bunch more to go, including the Jawa, so stick around here. We've got the Bush. This one did finally go back to what I think is closer to fair market value. There was another AFA 85 that sold recently in the 7s from CIB. This one was an AFA 85 and sold at $910. This one's kind of more in keeping, in my opinion, with fair market value. The Bush is very tough to get on the Trilogo. I have a CAS 80 that I paid $850 for. This was an 85 and sold for $910. I still think that's a really good deal. I overpaid for mine relative to what the last two have sold for. The Lando sold for stupid money, and this is the Palatoy figure inside. He always has that really dark complexion with the very bright eyes. And so that's the Palatoy no COO inside there. Not a Spanish figure or anything like that. Unpunched AFA 85, 917. Massive number. Massive number. As a reminder, I bought an AFA 80 Plus this year on Facebook, and I paid $375 for mine. I'm not saying it's comparable to this, because it's not. But 917, it's 2.5 times what I paid for mine, so I'm very happy with the number on mine. Here is the Hoth Snow Trooper. Shout out to Dominic R, who gave me this as a gift. He gave me an AFA 80 earlier this year. Absolutely generous gift. This one was an 85 and sold for $962. $962. Very fair number, in my opinion. I would have paid that in a heartbeat if I still needed it. Absolute stunner there. Here was the shocker. This one went for stupid money. This one is the Admiral Akbar AFA 85. Akbar is a tougher figure to find on the Trilogo, but man, $1,032. Now we're starting to get into some FU money. Okay, this is a lot of money, in my opinion, for an Akbar. There was an AFA 80 that there's been several AFA 80s that have sold recently, both from CIB and other sellers on eBay. The Biker Scout Bunker is another seller that I think had one that was an AFA 80. And they sold in that 500 to 600 range, maybe 650. But 1032 is a huge number. Big number there. I'm guessing that it's pretty low population in terms of the 85s on the population report. That drives the prices for a lot of these, I think, personally. But straight 85s for it, 1032. That's a big number. That's a huge number. And then another big number, but not terribly surprising. I would actually argue that this number is low. Okay, this is the hybrid Trilogo. So it's got the standard Palatoy front for Greedo, and then the hybrid back. I just got one of these for the Snaggletooth. This one, though, was an AFA 90. AFA 90 for Greedo on the hybrid Trilogo. 1180. I personally think this number's low. Okay, I don't know what the pop is on this one. I probably should have looked it up. But this is a low population, period, whether it's an AFA 90 or not. There's just not a ton of them on there. For reference, my Snaggletooth is an AFA 80, and there's none graded higher. So I'm guessing that there's not many of these that are AFA 90s. It sold for $11.80. I'm not saying that that's not a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But I still think, relative to the other ones that we're getting ready to show you, I think that's actually a pretty fair deal, in my opinion. If I had been looking for it and had that kind of money, I definitely would have paid that in a heartbeat. Speaking of 90s, here is the Princess Leia Hoth. Unpunched AFA 90. An absolute beauty. And that's one I would love to have to pair with my Leia Bespin. But it sold for huge money, $20.34. We just talked about the AFA 90 Darth Vader that sold, I forgot the number now, but it was over $2,000. It was like $2,900 if memory serves. This was again, it's an AFA 90, so you're going to pay a lot of money for it. But quite honestly, if I had the money for it, that's a number I could live with, about $2,000. I would have paid that in my opinion. It's a lot of money, but it is an AFA 90 and an absolute beauty, beautiful card image there. And congrats whoever got that. I think that's a very fair number personally. But the reason that probably, some of these other 90s went for a little bit less is because they were probably all focused on this one. And that one is the AFA 85 archival case Jawa on the Trilogo, unpunched as well. This is a very rare one. This is not as rare as the General Maydeen, but this is that next tier down. And the price reflected that, obviously, $7,200. 85, 80, 90 were the sub scores. It was as good as it gets. And again, this is probably one that we'll never see again in this grade. Maybe we'll see it in the Jeff Jacob collection that comes out next year. I don't know if he had an 85 or not, but wow, what an absolute beauty. It's really, really stunning. And it jumped really quickly out of the gate to over $5,000, and then it hit $6,000, and then it finally closed at $7,200. So I actually thought, I was talking to Chris W. offline before this auction ended. I thought it had a good chance at hitting $10,000. It would not have shocked me whatsoever if it had hit $10,000. So $7,200, yes, it's a lot of money. We talked about the AFA 75 Plus that sold on that alternate website in the UK, and it was sub $3,000 for a 75 Plus. But this 85 takes the cake in terms of rarity. It's obviously not as rare as the General Maydeen, but it's a really this is a very significant item. Okay, this is a very, very memorable sale that congrats whoever got it. It's just an absolute beauty. Very jealous of you if you happen to pick it up. But $7,200, would I have paid that? Probably would. If I had that kind of money, I would have paid that number. Again, it actually went less than I expected. I thought for sure it would hit 10, but $7,200, beautiful item. Congratulations. And that is all I had for this video. Mainly Trilogos again, but I just got to cover these things because when are we ever going to see an AFA 85 Trilogo Jawa on the channel? It's just never going to happen again, is my guess. I hope you enjoyed this look. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.